Hello and welcome to the 47th episode of the Foundry Roundtable, the podcast exclusively covering the Foundry for Star Trek Online. I'm the 47th regeneration of your tame Foundry author, Drogon1701. With me is a man who placed 47th in women's downhill skiing at the Olympics last week, Greendragoon. Well, you know, some say. Anyway, we also have a man who is 47th in line of succession for the Principality of Monaco, Hippiejohn.
You weren't supposed to tell anyone. I was just going to take the throne, invite all of my friends. Oh, well, now I've got to figure out a new plan.
I'm just angling for a position in your cabinet.
I see.
And the $47 million man, Markhawkman.
Hi.
And although we do have a guest, he's not actually our 47th guest. We'll just call him that for the heck of it. Foundry author, Admiral Tade.
Good evening.
And I want to start tonight with something, because I'm interested in sort of other forms of user-generated content in MMOs and kind of keeping up with that, and with an eye towards bringing ideas back to the Foundry, or, you know, comparisons back to the Foundry. So toward that end, I watched today some of Massively's live streaming of Everquest Next Landmark to try and get a handle on, well, you know, what it is, because I was very confused and didn't really understand what it was. So what it seems like to me is that each player kind of gets a claim of the overall game world, which is a certain sort of box of an area. And you can, and within that claim, you get to build all kinds of things. Like the host toured a few different plots to see what people have built. She saw a castle. There was a high-rise apartment. There was even a Star Trek-style 3D chessboard that was big enough for like human pieces. And you can dig down and make pits and caves. And I think somehow you like mine for the materials to build these things. I'm not quite clear on how that works. But you're actually editing the game world itself, which I think is very cool. And all these things are in that world for people to run around and look at. It looks like you can build some very cool things. Now, what there doesn't seem to be at the moment is room for any kind of story or quests or anything like that. Now, she says it's still an alpha and things like quests and PvP have been implemented. So I have no idea how that would work. Now, one thing that I was also not clear on that she cleared up for me is that there's two games here. There's Everquest Next and Everquest Next Landmark. Everquest Next is where all of these tools for building and delving and all these things will be used by the devs to create the gameplay experience. And in Everquest Next Landmark, the players will be the ones using all these tools to create this experience. Now, I don't know how separate these will be. I mean, I don't know if it's all free to play or what. I have a lot of unanswered questions, but it looks cool. It looks very, very different from what we have in the Foundry. Obviously, you know, we can't, looking around this map here, we've placed existing objects. We haven't necessarily built anything or delved into existing maps. We can't change existing maps. We can only add things to them. So, I mean, it's going to be a vastly different experience from what we do.
It's going to be a different experience. I have looked a lot into it, actually, because it was UGC and it's something that I'm kind of interested in with them putting it out there. The thing that's really impressing me the most is basically a lot of Landmark, I understand, is going to be like building the details and building assets. Like, if you decided that you came up with an idea for a really great statue and you built that statue, you can then put that on some kind of marketplace that they're creating so that other authors and other creators could say, ooh, I like that statue. If I take that one, I don't need to spend the time figuring out how to build a statue. And so they'll buy your statue. And apparently they're working on trying to make it so that it's actual cash money, not like Sony Cash or whatever it is. Like that somehow you get actual cash money or like game time for free or something like that to go along with it. So that mostly what it is designing, a cafe or something like that, like what we're sitting in. But in that cafe, you could put contacts that lead to a mission that takes place somewhere in the game or something. I'm not fully understanding it, and I'm still researching it, but I think it looks really, really good, actually.
There are some things I think would be cool to bring back to Stowe and the Foundry that could work, like that idea of having everybody have a little plot in the open game world. I think that would be perfect for something like the Dyson Sphere. Give every player, have a vast expanse of the Dyson Sphere, the interior surface. Give every player, every Foundry author a little piece of that. They can do whatever they want with it. They can add things in there. They can add quests, and you just fly over it, fly into it, and you can pick up the quest. I think I don't know if that's at all feasible within the Stowe game engine. It might be just a horrendous strain on it. It may not even be possible, but I think it'd be cool.
Yeah, it's definitely kind of interesting because, I made this point a couple of weeks ago that UGC is this emerging new trend, and it's definitely clear that there are a lot of people who are starting to realize that UGC has a great deal of potential to it. If they can figure it out, obviously, with something like Everquest Next Landmark, there's a whole bunch of pitfalls, especially when you involve real-world money.
Yeah, Rogue Enterprise brings up the point of objectionable content, which is something that I thought very funny about Primetime UGC's interviews of Captain Gecko the other week. Is that he mentioned that was like, I can't remember what game he was talking about, but he said that was, like the first thing that happened was swastikas and gay porn showed up in this other game. So that's I think that might be an issue, and I don't know how they're gonna get around it.
Well, they're gonna have to police it.
If I remember right, what Gecko was talking about was that people would go and arrange things on the tops of their roofs in the city to make pictures that were objectionable.
Yeah, something like that. I can't remember what game. I can't remember what game he was talking about.
Sims.
Oh, okay, yeah. Confess, I've never played any of those.
Yeah.
But it's still in a very early alpha stage, so I think there's a lot to come and a lot to learn about it, and a lot to learn about their plans for it. So I think it's one to watch, though. Definitely one to watch.
Yeah, it's our first look at the alpha. All we have is our first look at the alpha and knowing what their plans are at this point. So, I think it looked really good, what I've seen of it and what I've read. So,
I was gonna say, to turn this around back, what does this mean for Cryptic, Stowe, and the Foundry?
Well, I think if I'm kind of hopeful that if more games start using user-generated content and using it well and integrating it into the game, they might encourage them to do more with it over here. Might be a pipe dream, might not.
Yeah, I don't know. I have weird feeling. Obviously, we haven't seen a lot of development lately in the Foundry, but at the same time, if you look at like the new Arc website, Arc Games, and you go to Stowe's page, there's about 6 or 7 selling points on the game, and the Foundry is one of them. So at some level, somebody in marketing realizes that these games have UGC, and that is
one of the things that we were told, is that Perfect World was very interested in the Foundry.
Yeah. So obviously, I'd like to see them put more development behind it, but I don't think I don't think it's completely oblivious to them. The Foundry's has potential.
they can't be oblivious to it, but my response to your question there about what does this mean for Cryptic, what does this mean for the Foundry back here, I think it means that, to put it in a way my grandfather used to say, and I'm sorry if Drogon has to bleep a word, they're going to have to shit or get out of the bathroom, because they're currently on the leading edge. They currently have this amazing user-generated content tool that we all love using. But now other companies are saying, wow, people are liking, it's like you said, it's a new thing that's starting to get out there. And to be honest, there are other companies that are going to do it right, and that are going to do it that are possibly going to do it better than Cryptic did. And if they don't actually put some effort and some money behind expanding what they've already got, which is amazing, and which is, like you said 2 weeks ago, leading edge. It's like they started a race and they're already 100 meters ahead of everyone else in the race, but at this point they're kind of just standing around and waiting for everyone to catch up instead of taking advantage of their lead, is kind of the metaphor that I see going on here. So with EverQuest Next Landmark finally launching, and it actually seeming to have a few features that go beyond what people were expecting and beyond what we were all expecting with it, Cryptic's gonna have to really show us what they've got, or other people are just going to run right past them. That's kind of what I think it means, is that it's going to hopefully encourage them to start seeing the real amazing tool that they've created. Maybe it's a pipe dream, like you say, Drogon, but I hope they do something with it.
I mean, otherwise they're going to find themselves being passed by the new shiny things.
Exactly. The new shiny things are going to say, oh, look at all those things they did right. Let's do those and then do all these other things too. So, yeah.
What is it from Alice in Wonderland? You have to run as fast as you can to stay in place.
Exactly.
Well, one thing I thought of is this old saying that goes, imitation is the most sincere form of flattery. But in this kind of environment, you don't want to be flattered.
Right. I am sure that Cryptic is like, if nobody else ever creates user-generated content, we've got what we've got, and that's better than anything anyone else has. But if other people make things that are just as good as what they have, and then start making things that are better, that's the cost of ignoring a leading edge tool that they've created.
Well, let's move it on, because there is some news, and it's good news, ladies and gentlemen. News to warm the hearts of nations. The whiteness bug has been fixed.
Yay!
On Tribble,
I wish we had
right?
Yeah, it is on Tribble as we speak. I went over there on Tuesday to confirm it. It is absolutely fixed. I could not find any white objects. I mean, I looked through all of them, obviously, but
I looked so happy.
I looked through the ones that I knew for a fact had that issue, and they seem to be fixed. The building blocks in particular, and I kind of suspect that it will go live to holodeck tomorrow, being Thursday. They often post the patch notes as we're doing the show, so we will keep an eye on that and keep you updated.
Yeah.
I've got my eye on the forums.
Yes, indeed.
That piece of news makes me so happy.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it'll... Yeah. That's all I can say.
There's not much more to say about that other than, yeah. Finally.
It's about time.
Let's hope that the bug fixes don't end there.
Well, it was one thing because Cryptic Frost told us that one of the reasons we eventually got the fix in for that the Ice Caves map that was truncated was that Brandflakes had brought it to the attention of the new EP, Stephen D'Angelo. And I tweeted him back, hey, can you point them in the direction of Greendragoon's massive comprehensive bug thread? and he said they were aware of it.
Yeah, like I said,
I don't know.
I know.
Maybe that's a good thing.
I know I pointed it out to Gecko.
But I do think that Mr. D'Angelo being heavy on the technical side of things is going to be looking for bug fixes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that with D'Angelo's EP, things are going to start getting fixed really quickly. Because, like, as you said, he's the tech guy. We've already seen missions being reworked and some older bugs getting squished, like Fire at Will.
And apparently tails on Ferocins for armor, like the Voth armor. Apparently that's a big issue. I don't know.
Well,
I don't play Ferocins. So.
We're not seeing tails on the new EV suits either.
Well, I think that ought to come with a like an extension of the suit itself for the tail, right? Because it's got to stay pressurized.
Yeah, and have your tail exposed to the vacuum of space.
Yeah, exactly. But really, that's about all we have for news. There hasn't been much else going on. I know some people are trying to start some things on the forums. I haven't read it yet, but Kortog, who was on the show last time, is trying to start some sort of Foundry duel thing. Something where two authors do a contest with each other, I think.
I saw that. It looked like he called them pods. It's kind of like, from what my reading of it was that it's teams of two authors who say they agree on where it begins, where it ends, and where they hand it off, and any characters that are going to be shared. And then you create essentially two missions where the first author finishes his part, doesn't know where it's going to go, and hands it off. And so I guess he was looking for teams of people to work on that together. That's what it read like to me.
Could be interesting. Well, and anyone who is interested, he's got a thread on the official forums for that. Let's see, a couple other things. I'm going to put a plug in again for Zorbane's Foundry review trading thread. Mm-hmm. That's always a good way to get reviews if you're a new author or an old author who's got a new mission. And then Rogue Enterprise also started a review trading thread.
Yeah, he did.
Correct in that Zorbane now has 2 review threads?
Yeah, and both of them are incredibly successful. And I've noticed that, Rogue Enterprise has just, like all of 5 responses. I guess that's what he gets for stealing Zorbane's idea. Mm-hmm. Sorry, I'm just being cruel to my friend Rogue there.
Didn't Zorbane also start an asset sharing thread on Starbase UGC forums?
He did. Oh, we should mention the Starbase UGC forums.
Yeah, we should.
Because I think they're pretty much open to every Foundry author, anybody interested in Foundry missions. There's a link to them on the website. Now I will stick one in the show notes as well.
Yep, and there are a lot of really good resources that you can find in the forums and on the site, and a lot of
and I mean some of the big ones in that Starbase UGC forum is KirkFat went through and took screenshots of every interior and exterior backdrop and what it does to the lighting and what it looks like, and so it's really easy to look through, and you get kind of a bit more sense of what it's going to look like than it does flipping through it in the editor and testing, which I know it took him a lot of time to do that, so
I'm sure it did. Thank you so much, KirkFat. I know you're probably not listening to our show right now, but maybe you'll hear it in a recording somewhere. Thank you. You do so much great work that helps this community. You're awesome. Thanks, man. I have a piece of news.
Okay, go ahead.
Now that you've told us, now that we can say that indeed the white bug is the thing that made everything look like non-textured blobs is fixed. Hey, apparently Dragoon. I see forums in front of me on the page all of a sudden. That's weird.
Yeah, I can.
I'm just going back. I'm going back to game
because that fancy technical things.
Chat room. my piece of news is that with the bug of the whiteness fixed, that was the thing that, as far as I understand it, our community management team was waiting for to run the next Foundry challenge. I mean, Brandon, when
This is true.
when last year we live streamed our mission creation, he was like, "So what do you guys think about the challenge?" With the, he asked us if this bug was affecting, and yeah, it was. It was affecting everyone. It's very hard to work with that bug. So as I knew it, our Foundry challenge was being put off for the bug, that was that's being fixed, hopefully tomorrow. But my piece of news is that once the whiteness bug is fixed, I'm going to give it a week because you know what? I love Foundry challenges. It seems like half the time that I get something done, I get it done because there's a deadline involved somewhere. And in this case, I'm going to give it a week before I feel like I want to be creating something madly and crazily again. So if we haven't seen Foundry challenge within a week after the whiteness bug is fixed. Now, if that's tomorrow, that means I'm giving it until our next show before I make the announcement of what it is. But I have spoken with some other former Foundry challenge winners and a couple of other people that I know, and I have arranged for some pretty cool prizes as a possibility if for whatever reason we do not see a Foundry challenge within a week. There's a former winner and I who are going to post our own. So we're going to
Awesome.
be like, that's our challenge. This is our prizes. And we're going to try to get like as loud as we can with the fact that we're doing this. So my news is that if we don't see an official one, there will be a Foundry challenge from a couple of former winners of the challenge. That's my news.
I wouldn't be surprised if we actually see an official
Yeah.
Foundry challenge that by then.
I wouldn't
It's
either.
it's very
I
possible.
hope we do. I really hope we do because then I could enter it.
Well, see, we
But
were
I
having
love them
some
so much. I would help provide prizes for one.
we
So,
we were having some discussions about what topic,
yeah.
and there were some interesting discussions items in there like exploration. I put forward one, not for the first time, that missions that take place only within the interior of the player's ship.
Yeah, the mission in a bottle idea. I love
Mhm.
that.
It's gonna be kind of tough since we can't do the player bridge.
It's
But
all got to take place off the bridge, or have some reason not to go to the bridge and make a battle bridge, like I did for one of my earlier missions.
Yep.
So I think like all told, I have almost every piece across all my missions to make a whole Federation starship. So one of these days, I'd love to collect them all onto one map, but it would take a
Well,
lot of work.
Someone a while back did a very large swath of Miranda interior, didn't they?
Yeah, we saw screenshots of it. They were doing it for a Machinima series, and I don't know if anything ever came of that. It looked really good. He did some things with assets that I had not considered before. So I always love to see that.
I would like to see more like interior stuff for ships, because we have like the basic generic interiors, and then we have the Defiant and the Constitution. I think is what it is. Yeah, it was a Constitution interior.
Those are
But
obviously
that's
the
about
best
it.
looking ones, but those are very sort of class specific. Well, why don't we move it along to what we've been working on, and we'll have our guest go first. So, Admiral Tade, what missions or other things have you been working on?
Right now, I'm kind of just pilling around with it, but I'm working on a mission called The Space Between, and I've only got the first map done, and I'm working on the second map right now.
Can you tell us a little bit about what the mission will be like?
I'm gonna have you. The starting point is you're going to a mining facility in the Hafar system, and because it's you start off by your refueling, and what I'm planning to do is having you go off, do some sensor scanning, normal Starfleet stuff, and then eventually pirates are going to start showing up, and it'll evolve from there.
Ah, pirates. Hippie could give you some characters for pirates.
yeah, but they're deleted now, remember? The only place they exist is in your mission. I got
This-
bored
this
with
is
them. Their
true.
television program stopped being
canceled.
interesting.
Another show canceled in its prime.
Must have been on the Sci-Fi Channel. All right. Well, little hippie, what do you got for us as far as what you've been working on?
Well, I didn't get as much done this week as I would like to have. I just didn't have as much time in the Foundry as I did. So instead, I got a randomly weird idea during the week, and it's not the one that ended up getting worked on because the randomly weird idea that I had has to do with Ferengis and snail juice and why Ferengis will sell this stuff so cheaply. Um, but the thing that it did lead me to was looking at a couple of different maps while I was looking for a specific thing that I would want to use for this weird idea I came up with after having terrible iced tea at lunch one day. Um, what it made me find was some maps that work really well for a swamp sort of area, and not just the ones that say Swamp '01 or Swamp Plains and stuff, but some other things that would work really well. That it was one of those times where I just saw a map that I liked and I started building on it. So it's an almost, I guess, I think it was Kirkfat tells me that he approaches missions like this, where he just starts building a map until he knows what's going to happen there, and um, that's where the story, comes from. Is that there's just he's having fun building a map, and literally that's what I'm doing. I'm building a really fun sort of I want to currently it's angling toward being a Gorn sort of settlement in and among other ruins and stuff on this map. I'm just playing with it. So that's what I managed to get done this week. I didn't have any time to get in and get story into anything I'm working on or anything like that. But I did play around with a map and I'm having fun with it. So
Yeah, I've had missions start with a single map.
yeah, that's very true.
So
Like
I know that's how a lot of authors build.
Mhm.
They start getting they start with, kind of concept of a map and then build something
Uh-huh.
around it.
It's not the normal way that I build by any means. It is not at all the normal way I build, but it it's working. I mean, the map is fun to build, and I certainly have the open project in my library. So I'm willing to just leave it there and work on it and have fun with it. And sometimes I think that can be very good too. So
Sure. Hey, as long as you're having fun, who cares what you're doing?
exactly. And hey, I'm catching the chat room here real quick. Captain PF Dennis says that's the way that he does things, and just a little bit up from that, Zorbane confirms that the release notes are out now, and it does include the white asset bug fix. If I had a party popper on this character, I'd fire it off right now.
That's excellent. Excellent news. All right. So, Green Dragoon, what have you been working on?
So, this like last week, I got in a bunch of new computer parts I had ordered, and it ended up become something of a large ordeal to get them installed, involving formatting and my hard drive. So I have not been on. I've only been on Stowe some, and I haven't really been in the Foundry at all. Um, that said, I mean, more RAM, better sound card. So in theory, it only improve the show.
Well, I'll tell you, the stream has been better for me tonight. I mean, usually because I usually have it open so I can watch the chat room and things like that, and last couple times it's just been, go for a little bit, buffering, go for a little bit, buffering, go for a little bit, buffering. It's been great tonight. It's been fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I was running on 4 GB before, and decided that probably just wasn't enough anymore.
Apparently, it needs more.
I'm now update,
Yeah, more is almost always better.
and hopefully with a new sound card, I sound at least a little bit better.
Actually, I think you sound about the same.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but you said to me on the call, you sound about the same.
Yeah.
I will say that indeed, like I've just kept the chat room and that Twitch TV page open, and the stream looks a lot smoother. So To me, anyway.
Well, then something I did helped. Yay.
Yeah. All right, Mark, have you been getting anything done in the Foundry?
A little bit of tinkering, not really much at all.
That's
What?
okay. Honestly, I haven't been I haven't been in the Foundry much either. Aside from double checking the whiteness bug on Tribble. But I have been writing, and as is usual for me, I have not been writing in the project that I should be. I gotten like 3 maps of dialogue done in a mission that, you know, I started well after I started all my other current missions. So, but it should be interesting because I have in my head this really awesome map. That's part of it, and I tell you guys about it, and it's going to take a long time to build, but I have this idea of a hollow asteroid in which is a Romulan base from, like the 2200s, and just a massive number of Talis warbirds, the old TOS style warbirds, sitting there forgotten until you find it here in 2409. This is going to be a Romulan player mission. And what I think I'm going to do is make 2 versions of it. A KDF Romulan one and a Fed Romulan one. And I'm going to have them be, very, the same sort of plot, but different in tone and different in ending. So, I think I'm going to have to build one first completely and then duplicate it and alter it is how I think I'm going to do it. But I've gotten quite a bit of the dialogue done in that. And I think aside from that big asteroid map, it's not going to take a lot of building because it's going to be mainly space and some TOS interiors, which you just easily use the Constitution for. And beyond that, I haven't built anything more in my history mission from the Romulan Wars. I did get some more writing done in that, though. Unfortunately, I'm at a point where, in the story, where I hadn't quite fleshed out in my mind as much of what I wanted. I've reached the point of I'm beyond everything I had in my head. So I need to figure out where exactly the 2 or 3 more maps are going to go. I know where it ends. I just don't know how to get there. So why don't we move it along to mission reviews? I think Hippie will start with you.
Sure. I've been hopping whenever I'm in game thinking, hey, I have to have a mission to review for this coming round, the next roundtable. I ask in the Foundry Talk channel in game because there's a lot of people in there that are making their first missions and asking for asking for advice. I'm finding a lot of really good, how when we started doing reviews, we were trying to find ones with like not a lot of plays and just helping them get plays and the mission that I reviewed this week is called Of Morals and Ethics by I don't know how he says his name. For me, it's Vaporak. It's currently sitting at 4.15 in the in the rating scale of the way that they do it with the stars at Cryptic. For me, I'm going to say what I really liked about it was it's a really fun alternate universe kind of travels to a different place where things are different, and the title comes into play when you think about that because you're going to a place where things are really different and your morals and your ethics are going to be tested while you're here. The mission itself is, like I said, the story is really fun. It's really engaging, but there are a number of things that pulled me out of it and made it not as enjoyable and not very immersive to me as an experience going into it. There are a couple of very superfluous maps where the only thing that happens on them is a dialogue, and then I'm warping somewhere else. And as we pointed out earlier, there were people on the forums who were saying they don't even play Foundry missions because of the terribly long load time between maps. And that's kind of been a thing from the time that I created, I started creating missions over a year ago. And so that's true. And as an author, I try to now avoid any place where I have too many map transitions, and I try to find ways that I can bring them together. I looking at it, he's done an update already to the the version I played was an update, and he had already taken out some maps, and I feel like there is still place in there for him to bring some of those maps together and shorten the mission only through shortening the multiple minute load time that some people experience between map transitions. So there was that. It's a large number of maps. One I like the story a lot. I like the way that it's presented, and the thing that it's a good thing at times and it's a bad thing. Maybe it's because of the way that the whole thing is presented. As I said, it doesn't feel like super immersive. It almost feels like to give you an example of that, there's a place where there are a group of Klingons standing around with, they're drinking and making toasts, and the thing that you hear them say is something like "cry nerf and let slip the devs of war" or something like that. So it's little in jokes, and he names a lot of the characters that you run into. They're puns. They're names that aren't like, I mean, he'll take a dev's name and spell it backwards and make it into a Cardassian because the name looks and sounds differently back. So it's very in jokey, I guess, is what it is along the way. He uses characters of other players that that are friends of his, and so it becomes very self-referential after a point, and I guess the dialogue really reflects that in those places. It reflects this author's opinions and feelings, which a lot of people share. Don't get me wrong. Like, a lot of people share the same kind of feelings that Vaporak has about, nerfs in the game and things that are happening or things that have happened in the game. And, he'll make one of the artistic engineers is, Thomas the cat spelled backwards or something like that. And all of that, it just draws me out of any sense of immersion. And the dialogue at some points becomes very action movie like. The characters are talking like they're in an action movie, and that's both good and bad at the same time. The other thing that doesn't work for me is that the fights that appear do not seem necessarily with the flow of the story to me a couple of the times that they appear. And it feels like the fight is just there because he felt like there are going to be players that want to have a fight at that point in time. And so the explanation for why the fight is happening doesn't really feel good enough to me. There's no reason to take place in this fight. He also does one of those plot and how when we were talking about sphere of influence, there's a little bit of plot induced stupidity. He does a lot of really good BOF dialogue where they inform you of different things that are going on, but sometimes what he has them tell you, an alien that you encounter calls a shipyard a place of ships that you must go to, And my boss acts when he's like, "That's the shipyard, sir." It's like with exclamation points, and the dialogue that I have there makes me into a total idiot that couldn't figure out place of ships means the shipyard that's 40 feet away, kind of thing. So there's a little bit of that going on, and now I get
So
to
let me quick ask
yeah.
you a question.
hmm
So in that situation,
hmm
would you prefer it if like the captain dialogue was, "Oh yeah, the shipyard. Okay, I get it," or something like that?
If he wants the boss to inform me of it, I guess what it was in that exact situation, the boss acted like it was such a revelation that he figured out that place of ships meant shipyard, and that I hadn't figured it out. In the dialogue. But if he had just said, perhaps he means the shipyard, sir, instead of making it into, I figured this out, you didn't, Captain. And that's the way it came across to me. It'd be fine if he figures it out and tells me he thinks it's the shipyard, as long as it's not making it into my captain was too stupid to figure that out kind of deal, I guess. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so,
Yeah.
and I think it goes along the lines of what we usually say is not attributing too much personality to the bridge officers.
Right.
Like, one person's officer might delight in one-upping the captain like that, and another one would never dream of it. So,
hmm
kind of split the difference, essentially,
Yeah.
of them offering a suggestion.
hmm And what I get to the fact that, obviously there are a lot of parts of this that I enjoyed. I don't want to get spoilery about the things that are going on. It's in jokes. It's very fun. It really is a very fun story. But I did end up giving this thing 3 stars because I gave the mission 3 stars because the combination of the many little there are a lot of little technical things. I don't want to go through one by one each little technical detail that didn't work for me. I mean, I get to see Vaporak in the chat, and I can say, hey, this is some of the I can talk to him elsewhere about the little stuff. But there was story wise one huge, I'm going to call it an elephant in the room, because the minute that it happened, the moment, actually, not it didn't even take a full minute, the moment that it happened, I had to do everything I could to not just quit the mission. Because what it is while you're in this alternate universe and having to find a way to get back to your own universe, he works it out so that the only answer you have is that the dialogue leaves it with, you've been told that the only way you're going to get this help you need is to go murder someone or go do this other, like basically do things that are completely against every code of every Starfleet officer ever. And murder, sabotage of people that have done nothing to you, and there is no justification other than it's a Janeway moment. It's, I'll do anything if I can get home. And it to me, it was a huge elephant in the room. And from that moment on, I could not enjoy anything about the mission. I found myself not even reading dialogues, just wanting to get through them so I could get to the next objective. And the reveal at the end of who the mystery person was, I didn't care. All I wanted was for the mission to be over, because I was acting like not a Starfleet officer, and I was never given the option to even talk about, or never given any option to decide. Obviously we can't decide not to do something, and he wanted to lead us to this specific place. But it was that part of the plot, that part of the story, where I was forced to act, forced to sabotage things for these people that had done nothing to me. And it for me, that's why it got 3 stars. The whole getting up to, the story, the idea of how you get there, and it's really fun. And for some people, they're probably going to love it. As I always like to say, not everything in this game is for me. if that makes sense. Not everything in this game is for me, and this is one of those missions that just really, aside from the fact that I think the story was fun and well presented, that one moment, it was an elephant in the room, and I couldn't enjoy the mission after that. And this was one of those that just wasn't for me. So sorry, Vaporak, that I didn't enjoy the story. But again, I've got, when I see you after you've heard this, and I see you in game, I've got a few technical spots to say, hey, you might want to tighten this up or something. But yeah, that's my review for the week. So
Let me ask you this real quick.
Sure.
Do you think it would work for, say, a Romulan character?
Yes,
Because
actually.
Romulan character is not necessarily subject to that sort of code.
That's true. It might work really well for a Federation allied Romulan character. That's very possible. It's the kinds that they would very potentially do.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
So maybe that's an alternative he could explore in maybe sort of retailoring it a little bit to be a Romulan specific mission.
Yep.
And it's funny, you got the chat room talking a little bit about Janeway moments. It's an interesting phrase, because actually I think that those that you were describing is sort of an anti-Janeway moment, because she was always about gotta get home unless it hurts somebody else. And the times that they did do bad things essentially to get home, it sort of blew up in their face.
Yeah, that's true.
But once it blew up in their face, literally.
Yeah.
Yeah, literally often.
I guess you're right. Maybe what I'm describing is an anti-Janeway moment, because
Mhm.
So what
Could
you're
be.
actually describing is a ransom moment.
There you
Yeah,
go.
Ransom.
Captain
There
Ransom.
you go.
in
There
the
we go.
books.
Yeah, there's that.
And we all know
huge
how
thread
that
on the
turned out.
forum
Yeah,
with
we
people
know how
arguing about the stupid thing with Janeway and species or the Undine. Yeah.
Yeah, there was lots of questionable decisions along the way there, but that was the nature of what was going to happen in that situation.
And I mean, I'm very sure that is the intent of this, because this is part one of a series of things he's doing. Like, there's another one of honor and something, and he's got a couple that I think it's 3 that he plans to put together with this. And it could be what he's aiming for.
Oh, and by the way, Realm Time is taunting you with Commander Evans. We all know how much you love Commander Evans.
I love to hate her. She is actually one of my favorite Foundry characters ever, Realm Time. So, yeah.
All right. Well, Greendragoon, what review have you got for us?
Well, I
think I know, but
I went out and played this mission by this Drogon guy. Oof.
long time coming.
Yes, after many weeks of stalling, I finally got around to playing Purity 6. And I gotta say,
wait, we're getting a Purity review? Yes.
Yes, it's still out there. It hasn't gone away. It's actually still the top rated mission in the entire Foundry. So,
not sure how it got there.
by all means, let me have it.
Okay. So I'll start off with a synopsis. Following the turnabouts in Part 5, you find yourself on the run. While keeping a low profile, you decide to take advantage of one of the many rogue Starfleet officers you've taken prisoner, and through a little interrogation, managed to get a lead on a freighter, which is acting as the command base for this whole conspiracy. This, in turn, leads you to the planet where this all started, and you finally find the real President Okeg. And then this it kind of culminates in a big, giant parade back to Earth and huge battles that ensue. Story-wise, it's definitely one of the high points in the saga. I found that, I mean, for a concluding episode, I found it very very satisfying ending. I mean, I definitely like the pacing. The flow was very good. No point in the mission did it feel like anything was dragging or things were too slow. Nothing. Yeah, I mean everything played out well, and I found myself thoroughly engaged throughout. It was a nice touch to bring the planet from the first episode. Although I was, and for, as a, I will make as a general point, I'm a little disappointed that there is kind of this disconnect between what happened in the first few episodes and what happened in the later episodes because
That's something we're hearing a lot, and I kind of agree with it. Actually, we instead of writing a 6-part series, we ended up writing 2 3-part series.
yeah, um, and this kind of goes with it too. Is I think from the, I mean, in the overarching story, I kind of felt like there were too many characters because you killed off some characters and you had your bad guys switching, and you had like 3 or 4 different Starfleet captains, plus like 3 different admirals. So it got a little bit difficult to follow throughout. That said, I mean, for your portion of it, I thought you kept things nice and concise, and um, I definitely liked the ending with the showdown. Map design. Map designs were overall really good. You had definitely had some really nice ones. Your Federation Council Chamber very much reminded me of the scene from the Star Trek 4 with the
Kirkvat made that one,
ah.
based in fact on Star Trek 4.
You're supposed
He built it a long time ago and showed us some screenshots. And I don't think he ever did anything with the map. It was never an mission of his. And as we were developing the series, it pretty much called, in my mind, for one of the big showdowns to take place in Federation Council Chambers. So like, hey, Kirkvat, teach me how to build that.
Yeah, it worked really well. And the final map, or the I shouldn't say it's final, the second to the last map with the big finale on top of the Eiffel Tower was pure brilliance. I mean, I was literally
And
squeeing.
that is all Cerberus Films. He built that one.
You're gonna take credit for
Yeah,
anything
this-
during this review?
Well, I'll say this: it's a good
The rest of it?
example of how the teamwork of things
Yeah.
really came together. It's a great example of that.
I will say, with the Eiffel Tower, my only complaint against that is when you blow out the one side, um, it allows the player to get close and basically see that the Eiffel Tower is not all fully built. So if there was like any way, like a fire or something, and some invisible walls to kind of block the player from getting too close, that would
Well,
be
I sure
nice.
didn't want them to fall out. So there is one invisible wall there, but
Yeah.
you know, it's I don't know if you could really build the rest of the thing.
Yeah,
Mhm.
well, I think
Did-
it's just a matter of keeping them away from the edge too much.
You could put the invisible wall there and then disguise the invisible wall with a wall of flames.
Or I mean, just even like a little bit of debris, like sticking up, like the deck there has been blown up.
Just something to block your view down.
Yeah, I mean, just kind of keep it away from that edge. Um, let me see. There was a few maps that I thought were a little off. The freighter interior. It felt like a lot of places were kind of cramped. Like you were kind of were squishing in narrow passageways to kind of fit into space because you didn't have enough space to work with. For instance, like the transporter room, like kind of stuck in back in a cubby at the off the bridge. Felt a little weird.
Well, I can say I wanted it a little cramped because I mean it's a freighter. Space would be at a premium.
Yeah, but I mean,
it was an intentional thing, and maybe not best for gameplay, but
yeah,
it was
but I mean, then you
intentional.
had other aspects that were full size, so it didn't feel like it was cramped throughout. I think also the entrance to the council chambers was a little bit cramped, and I think it was a case of you were trying to fit it in, and
There is a challenge, I will say, when you're using somebody else's map. You know, building from a spreadsheet that they've given you of all the objects and their coordinates. and the challenge comes once you've done it, and you want to add to it.
Uh,
And it's not it wasn't necessarily built for that, but I
Yeah.
tried to do it anyway.
yeah, and it can be kind of hard to kind of make a pre-existing map work for your purposes.
hmm It was kind of built to be just the chamber itself, and for you not to go anywhere. But I really needed you to not start in the chamber.
I think on the bridge interior, I also saw a gap in the wall where it didn't look like you meant for people to be able to see to go through, but it was fairly wide. I don't know if you'll ever get a chance to edit that again.
Well, I might. Brandflex gave us a chance a couple weeks ago to revise and make corrections and anything like that. So
All right, so gameplay-wise, combat was very smooth overall. I didn't find any places where things felt overly hard. Um, I don't think I found any of the fights particularly challenging, but a lot of the bigger fights involved a lot of NPCs as well. So there was one case where there was a mob patrol walking around the back of the prison camp, right behind the tent that got stuck on the tent, and then subsequently was shooting through the tent. Apparently, if you're inside the tent and there are enemies outside, they will shoot straight through. Probably because the tent is kind of one-sided, so they can see you through the tent walls. I mean, if you were to go in there, you could probably fix it by throwing in a couple of invisible walls around the edges of the tent. The large-scale battles on Earth and down the council chambers were awesome. Everything was working beautifully. I mean, it definitely had that grand epic feel. I stuck around and cleaned up Earth. I wasn't about to leave a fight like that. The extra explosions in the council chambers were also a really nice touch.
it's my favorite thing to do: take a beautiful
Yeah.
set and blow it to hell.
Overall, the mission ran smooth, and it was a nice finish to the series. I can definitely see why it's getting the high rating. I think I just want to say, like, overall, I mean, the Purity series is an impressive feat. I mean, just considering how many authors were involved with it and all the coordination that must have gone on, it really is an impressive series of missions. I mean, what were your thoughts having survived through it?
Well, I had a lot of fun with it. I think, and I really hope all the other authors enjoyed their the process. And you know, can't say enough praise for Rogue Enterprise and keeping us all on task. He was our project manager, and Captain PF Dennis for developing the story. I mean, he really just did incredible work on that. Despite the fact that it ended up, as I said, being 2 3-parters instead of 1 6-parter.
Yeah,
but
but I
that's
mean,
okay.
yeah, I mean, again, considering how many people, and I know that you guys went from a 5-part to a 6-part
Yeah,
mid-production.
because we had six interested authors and 5 available missions, so we added 1 in there in the middle. But you know, as we've always been saying, we really wanted it to serve as kind of an example of, you know, this is what you can do. Cryptic, you know, or PWE, to be more precise, they will support us in doing these big projects. There's a market for big story missions. People like story missions, and that's evidenced by we have great reviews. It's been still holding at a 96% 4 and 5-star rating, and it's just never wavered from that. And so I really hope that some other people will band together and create, you know, make a KDF series, make a Romulan series. I think it'd be fantastic.
Yeah.
The hope is that at some point somebody will make something that is even better.
Any tips for anyone tackling a collaborative series like this?
Um, well, if you've ever done a group project in school, it's a lot like that. Um, Generally, people are maybe a little bit better natured, though, because we're all doing something we enjoy instead of doing something we have to do. Um, it's always one of those sort of check your ego at the door things in the initial phases, um, because you want it to be collaborative. You want it to be um, ideas from everyone, so that everyone feels like they're included. So when you start building the missions, everybody feels like, yeah, this is going to be great from start to finish because, you know, I contributed to all of it, and they have a stake in all of it. That's what I felt like anyway. And the great thing is it got an idea of mine done that I'd had for a long time and never had any time to build it. It was going to be a huge series all based on, all sort of explaining why the Federation and Starfleet specifically doesn't act like Starfleet anymore from the shows. They act more like the Imperial Starfleet from the Mirror Universe sometimes. And I put that forward, and the guys went for it and added in a lot of their ideas.
Awesome.
I feel like that would make a good set of Foundry missions as well. Because
it's in
I've
part
seen a
what
lot of
we
people
did.
complain about that.
That was kind of in part what we did, and it went other places from what I had intended on doing, and I think that's great actually, because I know I'm never going to have time to do that series. But it was going to end like this one ended with finding out that the president wasn't the president, it was an imposter, or something like that, or a conspiracy that goes all the way to the top. I'm a big fan of 24, and that's kind of always the plot there. So I was good fun, I thought.
So, Pax Federatica makes a really good point in our chat room, guys. When we get what they keep talking about bringing over an author and campaigns, possibly like they've got over in Neverwinter, and possibly getting that into our Foundry. He says if we do get campaign support here in STO, he wonders how that would support collaborative campaign projects like Purity.
Well, probably wouldn't. I mean,
I don't think it would.
I think it could if they got the idea to do it. I mean, I would say I wouldn't dismiss anything as impossible if they decided to do it.
You
Right.
could do it if there's a final assembler, someone who's assembling all of the missions.
Mhm.
It could be collaborative in like somebody writes, somebody designs landmark assets and stuff like that.
And just one person actually builds the mission from the work done by all the other guys.
So kind of like what we
You could
did
do it that way.
with the Make Diplomacy Go.
Right. Which I still haven't played in game.
I need to go back and
Almost
make some
nobody has.
fixes. There's a few typos and a couple of things that aren't working right.
That's okay. It wasn't really necessarily meant as a mission to be played. It was meant as an example of building one and doing it live.
An example of building it, and also just that was a great thing for me to remember how much fun playing with the Foundry
absolutely.
is. So,
all right. Well, thank you very much, Green Dragoon. That was a good review.
Yep.
Mark, you had a review.
Yes, I played a mission called Rescate in Rura Penthe by Nenfis. This mission is a KDF side mission, obviously, and it's written in Spanish. So if you're not a native speaker of Spanish, you will have difficulties playing the mission at best. Honestly, I thought it was a really nice mission. I mean, because it has a lot of different aspects that you typically don't associate with the KDF in the game, but are things that not it's not necessarily things that you would expect a Klingon to do, but they're definitely things that you would expect a Nausicaan or an Orion to do. I mean, the basic gist of it is that a member of one of the great houses hires you to rescue someone from Rura. I didn't quite get the reason why because, well, my Spanish language skills aren't quite that good. But so the next step of it is you need to get into Rura, and you do so by getting sentenced to go to Rura, which is kind of different, to say the least. But so you get sentenced to go to Rura. You of course, before you go there, since you're planning on going there, you do something to make it so that you'll be able to accomplish your objective, even though you're technically supposed to be locked up there. Then, after you're there, you do the standard run around and shoot all the guards thing, and after you find the person, you do some more stuff and then leave. Of course. Well, and then eventually you get around to turning over the person that you rescued to the person who hired you to rescue her, and get double crossed. Apparently, he didn't feel like leaving witnesses to the fact that he had to resort to doing this or something. I didn't actually understand his explanation for why he was double crossing me, but it kind of makes sense for a Klingon to double cross someone simply because he didn't want to know, want word to get out that he'd done something as dishonorable as hiring them in the first place. Overall, I thought it was a really well-designed mission because, he set up some pretty good sets. Like his set where you have the Klingon judges that are sentencing you to go to Rura Penthe. Reminded me a lot of that one that Captain Kirk was in that one movie. And
Star Trek 6?
Yeah, Undiscovered Country.
Yeah, maybe. Anyways, well, he actually had several very well-designed sets. I mean, because the ones on Rura Penthe in particular looked like he actually, designed them based on the way Rura Penthe looks in the new Klingon storyline missions. And beyond that, there was one minor annoyance, I guess you could call it, with this, is that he used all of the enemies in the mission that I know of are members of the KDF, but there's a wide variety of randomness in the actual actors that are chosen to represent the members of the KDF. But it works out, but it's kind of weird. I'm not sure if we have actual KDF that are always going to. Wait, do we actually have rival KDF in the Foundry as an option or not?
No,
No,
not currently.
Oh well.
Would be a great thing to add.
It would be.
The rival KDF would be a good thing to add for Klingon missions.
Yeah, since the Feds have the Mirror Universe.
Especially if you could code the rival KDF to be friendly to Fed. Anyway,
Yeah, and like the Gorn separatists and
Yeah. So
It's
that
like
we
normal
wouldn't
pirates.
have to reskin somebody else to stand in for that.
repeatedly.
that's one of the big problems I do have with stuff like that. But we can get into that later.
Anyway, so good mission, and worth playing if you want to play a Spanish language mission.
Excellent. Mark, why don't you and I save that other mission that we played for another time so that we can move on to discussion topics?
Okay.
Unless Admiral Tay, have you played any missions lately you want to mention?
I wish. I've been so busy lately with performances.
Real life does tend to interfere. All right, discussion topics, and one of the first ones I want to bring up, we could call it our technical topic, but I've been playing around with the idea of, doing these history missions. This first one with the Romulan War it doesn't have any space combat in it. So there's no risk of, somebody bringing a modern ship into an old mission and wondering, why is my ship modern? Realizing that, of course, I can't change it for them. So, in a future mission, I have some in my head that would require essentially that I'd like to encourage the player to bring their old NX class, because I don't know how many people have them, but I've got one, and it would fit in the mission time frame, obviously. But of course, it's down on weapon slots, it's down on hull strength, and all of that. I mean, you can equip it with Mark 12 stuff, but it's still going to be weaker. So here's the question. I'd like to encourage people to bring one, but how do I balance the combat so that they won't get completely owned? Or can I? Or should I just drop the idea altogether? So I'm just looking for some thoughts from you guys on this.
I mean, you could drop down the grade of mobs. I mean, obviously, frigates are easier than cruisers. They're easier than battleships. So drop it down, make the frigates your standard mob, and then the cruiser your boss mob.
Now, are the weak mobs actually weaker, or are they just two frigates? Are they weaker than your
They are
standard
actually
frigates?
weaker.
So, yeah, no, they're not that much weaker, though. The issue is going to be that if someone who's a level 50 in a tier 1 ship is fighting them, they're going to be scaled for the fact that the player is level 50.
Yeah, they're going to be expecting you to be in a tier 4 or tier 5 ship.
Yeah, tier 4 or 5.
And I think probably I would need to go in and actually test it. Make just a quick little mission with one map and some combat on it, and test these different kinds of mobs with me and my old NX class full of Mark 12 gear.
Right. And I mean, because it's possible, I'm thinking maybe even scale it back one more than you were saying, Dragoon. Like, because you can reskin things and just use those weak mobs because they're nothing, then the weak ones are just a couple of frigates, and possibly a level 50 captain with all of their level 50 captain abilities, special consoles they can put on, and very possible. I mean, there are people out there who've taken tier 1 ships and completed
STFs, yeah.
STFs with them. So
which is why it makes me think it's possible.
I think it's probably possible. I just don't know how far down you'd have to scale things, because there's no way an NX could take on a battleship mob at 50th level.
And you'd have to choose your mobs very carefully. I mean, you wouldn't want to put them up against Voth.
Right,
Well,
right.
I'm one of those people that did a shall we say themed STF, and the NX only died once, so that should tell you something.
And I think some people appreciate a higher degree of difficulty. I mean, I'd very much warn them beforehand, if they chose to do this, it could be more difficult. And obviously, people could still bring their regular old ships into the mission. just once again, I wish we had the ability to change the appearance of the player's ship for that mission, like Cryptic can do in a couple of them.
Right.
Night of the Comet specifically comes to mind.
Yeah, Zeronius explained the reason why we can't do that is because it's nightmarish to code in Cryptic mission.
Yeah, she
Right.
mentioned that.
Hey, Relum brings up a good idea for you in our chat room, Drogan. Split your enemy groups so that the player is only facing 1 or 2 ships, and you can have the rest spawn off in a corner to be picked off by NPCs.
Mm-hmm. Well, and there's going to be, in both of these missions, there's going to be NPC helpers, ally NPCs, because, okay, so the mission I've been working on is, the opening battle of the Romulan or the Earth Romulan War, and there's 2 other battles that I can do. One is the Battle of the Sol System, in which the Romulans try to make a decisive attack on Earth, and they get defeated essentially in orbit of Mars. And in that one, you'd be flying an NX class, a brand new ship off the line, and there would be several others to help you there. Along with some civilian-ish ships, kind of like a ragtag fleet, essentially. And then in the third one, you would take part in a diversionary attack on Romulus itself, while, to take the heat off the Enterprise, which is going to attack important Romulan shipyards. So, in both of these, it'd be very heavily space combat because, of course, the Earth Romulan War was almost exclusively space combat, and the 2 sides, we didn't even figure out what Romulans looked like. According to the book I read, the higher ups in our government did, but your rank and file captains didn't know. So, I mean, that's the idea. You're going to have people there to help you, which usually makes the battles easier. And if I made the NPC helpers battleships and then made the enemy mobs weak, they could get you through. So I'll have to do some testing. We'll see what comes.
I think it's gonna be balance testing, and the only way to do it is gonna be to be level 50 in your.
I'm gonna have to make a grind mission.
Oh.
one map with constantly respawning enemies to kill over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
I've done test missions like that. Usually when I'm trying to figure out which mob type to use to respawn or to reskin.
I'm not gonna lie, I've done the same thing for myself.
Well, I'll tell you the easy part.
If I do a grindy mission or just a grindy map, it's typically because I want my Foundry character to acquire things, or because I have a weird idea in my head as to what the mission should be, and it just happens to involve killing a lot of things. Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But the nice thing is that, of course, it's just, against Romulans, so I don't have, the only thing I have to reskin is reskin them to old style warbirds, which we have, thankfully. Didn't used to have them.
Yeah.
I think something interesting to have in a mission like that would be those old style warbirds, but have them with the destabilized plasma torpedo.
I don't know if do they fire that if
No.
The NPCs?
No,
they
because
don't fire it.
That's a shame.
the enemy Romulans are Imperial Romulans, and Imperial Romulans don't have the console powers that the Republic Romulan ships do.
Well, let's see. We have friendly Republic mobs in there. Do they fire that weapon?
No, as far as I'm aware, none of the Romulan ships have been updated with console powers.
NPCs and players are not the same thing. They don't even
This is
function
true.
the same way.
All right, let's move it along. Someone had a topic earlier that they were saying before the show. I've completely forgotten it.
That's probably me. So,
Oh yeah, you were wanting to talk about your best bang for development buck.
so yes, this
Right.
is kind of a subject that I've wanted to bring up on the show for a couple weeks now, and it kind of spawned from something Captain Gecko had mentioned in one of his interviews about basically having to be judicious about deciding what brings the most bang for their buck when it comes to developing for the Foundry. And he was kind of going for looking for pieces of tech that are easily to implement and don't require a lot of programmer time. But I mean, that kind of got me to thinking about what kinds of things could we use or could be added to the Foundry that would get us a lot of bang for buck would not require a lot of development time.
So for me, I guess it's that's where I feel that Gecko has a little bit of a disconnect with what a lot of the Foundry author community really wants. And I could be reading what I think the author community really wants wrong. We seem fairly okay with the tech that we have. We can create really great things with it. Sure, a couple of fun things coming over from Neverwinter, like follow an author or campaign support, or for whatever reason, Gecko is really all about the nudger and the when he said that was the feature he was really excited about. To me, I don't get the feeling that all of those new toys are what people want. I get the feeling that they could use the time that it's going to take to port that stuff over and make it work in the STO Foundry, because that's going to take time. I feel like if they took the time that it's going to take them to port things over and make it work for us, if they spent that on new assets that people really, really want, if they spent that on figuring out how to fix the search function and how to fix that top 50, then we would be far happier. Um,
Well, I mean,
whatever time they have, the real bang would come from fixing the tool and putting it into a usable state before they started giving it new toys. That's my opinion of it.
And what I had posted in that thread of yours was essentially, I think the best bang for the buck is to work on things where some of the work has already been done. For instance, fixing
too,
and
yeah.
getting the costume import export back in there,
yeah, or
and things like that.
the dialogue with object.
Dialogue with object, and I actually include some Neverwinter features in that because obviously some of the work has been done. It's just getting it over here.
Yeah,
Um, and there's a lot of little things from Neverwinter that I do like and that I do really want, like campaign function we were talking about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a really good thing, and I think we should have that.
yeah, but yeah, I think a lot of the really useful things um, are also the smaller features in Neverwinter, like for instance a one-way walk or a placeable light. I mean, especially for those of us who built in the black space. I mean, your map is kind of dark when you build in there, and so I mean the ability to even have a just like a detail object that is nothing but a placeable light would be a huge boon.
Well,
Um,
another example that I can think of there is the ability to toggle the state of an object instead of having it, you know, change states and stay that way.
yeah, I don't. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that may end up being more work than it seems.
Yeah,
I mean,
there's probably a lot of things that are sort of more work than we think it might be.
I mean,
well,
yeah,
I
I
mean,
mean,
I tossed that one in there as an example because it's one of the things that the beta version of the Neverwinter Foundry had. So I mean, it seems like it wouldn't take all that much to me, but yeah, I don't know.
See, for me, I guess, Drogan, what you pointed out, the fixing the things that we've already seen, that some of the work is already done on. That's part of my thought, is that that's what those hours should be spent toward, is fixing, whatever was wrong with costume import export. Figure it out with those hours rather than figuring out campaign support. Do campaign support somewhere down the line. That's fine, in my opinion, but get things working.
Yeah, like what we said earlier with assets, that's a big thing. Assets and costumes. There's a few Founder missions I want to do, but I can't do them because I don't have the costume parts or the certain assets that I want to use.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean,
I think the biggest one that people are complaining about is that the Jupiter uniform isn't there yet. That has been in game for at least 2 years. How has that not been added to the Foundry yet?
I think it's because they had a different approach to doing it back then, a different approach to what was going into the Foundry. At this point, listening to Gecko's interviews, we know that his attitude toward it is remembering to tell people, hey, tag this for the Foundry too.
yeah,
When new assets are getting created. It wasn't like that back when the Jupiter uniform was created. Or even, someone in the chat room said the Odyssey uniform. Like that wasn't their operating procedure at that point in time. They didn't think about throwing it. Now they do. So newer stuff we're getting, it's just a matter of there's a lot of older stuff that never got in there. Yeah.
yeah, and I mean, at some point, especially from the perspective of a dev, I mean, you look at the mountain of stuff that isn't in the Foundry, and it's like, well, which do you put in first?
Mm-hmm.
And something that this thread kind of taught me is that Foundry authors are not in agreement. We don't all
No.
look at it the same way. We all have different
No,
priorities.
no, we don't. and you're going to find that with any group of people, is that they're not all going to hold the same opinions on things, even if we're drawn together by our enjoyment of one particular aspect of the game, but we don't all think alike.
Right.
And I mean, that's why it always bothers me when people on the forums say, they start off the post with, players want this, the player base wants this, we want this, and it's usually something that I completely disagree with, and I'm always tempted to say, what you say, we Kimosabi.
Yeah, there's a lot of that.
Myself and many other people have done just that.
Oh yeah, usually somebody says it, but it's like, I always, post your own feedback, speak for yourself.
Yeah.
And maybe people will agree with you.
So,
but yeah, I mean, there's obviously a lot of different things that Foundry authors want, and usually it's sort of it's the things that we've run into that we can't do in missions that we've tried to do, or things that we think will help our missions.
That's why we all want something different.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
Well, one interesting challenge I remember having inflicted upon myself was the challenge of finding a way to attempt to recreate a TOS era Romulan uniform in the Foundry. And this was back in like season 4 or something.
Yeah, I remember you even helped me make one, or at least as close as we can get to one. Back before Legacy of Romulus for one of my missions. And obviously we've got one in the game now. It's not in the Foundry.
yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's a mountain. So something I was thinking about when you mentioned stuff that we had but was broken and got removed is, what about Romulan Foundry missions?
Yeah. What about that?
Yeah, what about that? It's what the question is, what is the hang up? Because obviously they must have worked on it.
I'm pretty sure that the hang up is it a Romulan Fed or a Romulan Klingon?
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure that's the hang up.
They must just have not found a way to
Right.
bring those two together enough to where they can see the same Foundry missions.
Yep.
It could very well. And I mean, there's probably a
And unfortunately, maybe there is no way to do that. I mean, it was just a victim of how they wanted to set up the faction.
Yep.
Well,
I think it
one
might be.
dev comment about this particular issue, it really to me seems like it says a lot about why the feature was removed. Is that one of the devs made a comment to the effect that the feature was never meant to go live in the first place, which tells me
that when it briefly appeared.
Yeah.
yeah, but Gecko
it's
then
something
came on.
that they've been tinkering with and hadn't figured out how to make work properly.
And maybe they had already decided to stop working on it when it accidentally went live.
No, because I mean,
that's
Gecko
what I
came on later and clarified and said that yes, it was a feature they wanted to get in.
Right.
So obviously, we know they wanted to, and I'm sure there's been all kinds of things that they've wanted to do, and even going past the daydreaming phase, and just haven't had time for, hadn't figured out exactly how, things like that.
I don't know. I mean, not having Foundry missions is one of those things that is one of the arguments against the Romulans being a full faction. There are still a few remaining outstanding aspects that the Romulans don't have that the other factions do.
This is true.
So I know. I mean, getting it in would kind of help legitimize the Romulan faction.
Which is an argument that I made before Legacy of Romulus came out, when people were very much up in arms about, well, some people, I should say, were very much up in arms about how they were doing this faction. It, wasn't going to be a full faction and blah, blah, blah. And I said, aimed at Cryptic, saying, give us Foundry missions, give us the ability to make Romulan Foundry missions. It will go a long way towards helping them feel like, to allaying these concerns.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think it, some of that, like, we're even trying to do it without the ability to do Romulan Foundry missions.
Oh yeah,
There's a lot out there. People trying to
four or five at the very least that I know of.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And we're doing it all without the fancy assets from all the new all the Legacy of Romulus missions. Doing it with stuff that was put in the game way back pre-launch.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a ton of new assets that I would absolutely love to have in the Foundry that were added in Legacy of Romulus. I mean, enormous.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much that it's another one of those. I scratch my head and wonder how they're not doing it.
Because it's a lot of work. I mean, it's not even just figuring out the tech. Doesn't stop there. You would need a sufficient collection of starting assets to really make it work.
Mm-hmm. That might be part of it.
Well, I mean, there's enough. I mean, there's Romulan assets in the game. There's just a million consoles. I mean, I've made a video of it one time for the show.
Yeah.
There's a million consoles. There's a couple of different kinds of walls. There's some maps as well. Now, I say we can't make it look as nice and as awesome as the cool stuff that, I think probably a lot of it was Taco Fangs built for Legacy of Romulus, but it is doable.
Mm-hmm. So there's a part of me that wants to believe the reason that none of those assets are in there is because they really do want to give us the ability to make Romulan missions. And whoever that was, you that just said, Drogan, the idea that you have to have a good bunch of starting assets for use, and maybe they're still trying to build enough starting assets for the Romulan players or for the Romulan authors to use to be able to create those. Who knows? There's a part of me that says that that's why they're holding them off and hopes it's true, even though I know it's a pipe dream.
One thing that Sir Boulevard is saying in the chat room is that for some reason the Romulan Republic uniform is available for KDF females in the Foundry. And I mean, not Romulan females, KDF females. He's going to go check and see if it works on KDF aliens, because I mean, obviously that you could, if it works, you could make a KDF alien, make them look like a Romulan, put them in the Republic uniform.
This makes me
It would
wonder
be
one
a
thing
very
It's an annoying workaround, but I mean, we don't have it otherwise, so.
yeah.
This makes me wonder something very specific, though, is that back when we temporarily had the ability to make Romulan Foundry missions, what was the set of mission doors that you could use for those?
Oh, I can't remember. It was very limited. I want to say it was similar to the KDF doors, except you couldn't do Omega Leonis. But you could do Deep Space Nine. You could do, you know, up in Romulan space, except for Tau Dewa, where there's no doors anyway.
Well, I mean, because that's one thing that I'm thinking about is that they would need to do for, you know, proper Romulan Republic missions is that need to, you know, fix it so that they actually have proper doors in Tau Dewa and maybe, you know, inside the new Romulan social maps. Because,
Absolutely.
I mean, that's something that, you know, everyone else does. I mean, we got to this map from entering a random door in a corner of Qonus.
And I would think that you couldn't have doors on Kronos or like Earth Space Dock or places that were only accessible to either Fed-aligned Romulans or KDF-aligned Romulans. You'd have to have the only doors available be in sector blocks that they could all get to.
Well,
Yeah, it'd be
And
serious
I'm
or
talking about, though,
yeah.
the equivalent of what we used to get here to this map, such as, you know, one of those random closed doors in the flotilla. I mean, because you walk down the hallway and there's like, you walk past like 8 different doors when you're wandering around that have no function other than, you know, looking like part of the wall.
You know, speaking of the Knight Templar mentions the flotilla ought to have foundry doors. Completely off topic, but I feel like I'm just going to throw this idea out there for everybody. I feel like there's some foundry missions that could be very, very cool of telling the story of the flotilla and Datan and Admiral Kararek prior to when the Romulan character meets them. You know, like have it be like the first season of Battlestar Galactica, where it's, you know, a ragtag flotilla of Romulan Republic ships under constant attack from the Tal Shiar, and I think that could be really cool. Could be very dark.
Mm-hmm.
Desperate flight. But anyway, Sir Boulevard did some checking, and unfortunately, KDF aliens do not have access to the Republic uniforms.
I can just think that it might be a bug.
Of course, it's a bug.
Well,
Because I don't know why Klingon females would have access to that at all.
Yeah.
it's a big bug.
Because apparently they do. It's very
That'd be a
strange.
tough story cell.
It would.
You defected to the Separatists.
There you go. There's a foundry
really
challenge
stupid.
for you. Come up with an excuse why a Klingon would be wearing a Romulan Republic uniform.
Oh, he says the aliens do have the KDF aliens do have access to the Republic pants for the good that does.
Just the pants.
That is the weirdest bug I've
It
ever
is.
heard of.
It's very strange.
Yep.
Oh, I've heard of some doozies in other games, but
Well, we're definitely not the only game to have bugs. I mean, there was one.
No.
I mean, I played WoW for years and years and years, and there was one that just never went away. I mean, it wasn't really impacting the game in any way. It just was always there. I could always count on it. It was comforting in a way.
It's when it becomes a feature. Sometimes a bug just becomes a feature when they don't deal with it.
Yeah, I'll tell you what it was. It was a particular flight path. You take the Griffin from one town to another, and it would always run into palm trees at a certain point. Just
Really?
run smack into them, and then like glitch around and keep on flying. I bet you it's still there.
Well, the funny thing is, in the Foundry, we have a habit of often taking bugs and then turning them into features. We figure out how to, dare I say it, exploit them.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, if they're not going to get fixed, right?
I mean, if you think about it,
Might as well use them.
We used to not be able to build in the black space because the Foundry would prevent you from spawning any NPCs in the black space.
Mhm.
At some point, that stopped working, and we took advantage.
Yep.
Which
there
can be a
are
little dangerous sometimes.
Yeah.
there are actually certain maps that have a very restricted limitation still of where you can place objects. Like the Deep Space Nine map, you can't build in the black space in the Deep Space Nine map, even though it has a gigantic swath of it.
What you can do on the Deep Space Nine map is build above it.
True.
But you will still see the big docking pylons outside the window, if you have any windows in your map, because those are actual geometry and they go up and down. Actually, just up, I think.
Well, one thing I learned from my experimentation with the Deep Space Nine map is that certain parts of the geometry of the outside of the station are actually not interactable. If you try to walk on them, you'll just fall straight through.
Well, we're nearing the end of our time limit here, so anybody got a question they want to leave the community with for the week?
What are you going to do now whiteness bug is fixed? That's my question for the community.
You Skyped out a little bit for me there. So
sorry, I was going to. My question is, what are people going to do now that the whiteness bug is fixed? And that was a lot of people's reason for not working in the Foundry. So what are you going to do?
Build like crazy.
I got a different one, kind of related. Now that the whiteness bug is fixed, if you could have say to the dev team, fix this bug next, what would that bug be?
You could pick just one.
Just one.
Yeah.
It's an interesting question. I'd have to think a little bit.
Yeah, I couldn't answer that in like a couple seconds. There's too many bugs.
Well, we'll everybody think about that, and we'll say some answers on the next show.
Absolutely.
But for now, we will say good night.
Night. Oh wait, before we go, contact info.
Throw up the contact info.
Yep.
So apparently I did this graphic wrong, and that is not actually our email address. Actually Foundry Roundtable at live.com, isn't it?
That's correct.
So apparently we've been saying gmail.com for like several weeks now.
Whoops.
Oh yeah, Primar mentioned something or other about trying to email you guys and failing.
He got through eventually.
So I actually went out and registered Foundry Roundtable at gmail.com. So now if anyone
sends... we've got both.
We've got both. So we can be emailed at either of those locations, foundryroundtable at gmail.com or live.com. Or you can follow us on Twitter at Foundry Roundtab. Rogan, you can be followed at Rogan1701. Hippiejohn is at Hippie_JOHN. And I am at Greendragoon with 2 O's.
And of course, we can always be reached on the forums or in game. I think we're all members of the Foundry Talk channel.
Yep. I am.
Yeah.
I've seen Mark in there a bunch.
Yeah. I'm always lurking whenever I'm in game.
I always leave it open whenever I'm in the game.
Same.
Some good conversations in there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, now we will say goodnight.
All right, good night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
All right. So